In Washington, D.C., under Fenty, Gray, school reform strategy has been driven by raising comprehensive assessment system, CAS scores, as the overriding objective. It is focused on firing teachers and principals for failing to sufficiently raise such scores, accessing and removing hundreds of teachers and other staff without needing to show cause, hiring hundreds of inexperienced and inadequately trained teachers, and closing 38 schools, all serving overwhelmingly black students east of Rock Creek Park. So where do we go to from here? Fortunately for the children we're fighting for, we don't have to invent a sound strategy for improving low-achieving schools to replace test and punishment. Research and experience show such a strategy already exists. The same strategy that low-achieving schools have actually used to successfully turn themselves around. This strategy is described in the paper, Common Elements of Successful School Turnarounds, 2010, by Gary Ratner and Monty Neal. Gary is here with us, and I'm thankful that he is a part of our team. They prepared this report, this paper, as at the invitation of a congressional committee. So instead of punishing school staff for failing to raise standardized test scores, this strategy focuses on helping low-achieving schools improve by instituting specific practices in each of 5 key areas: leadership, instructional improvement, curriculum, school climate, and parent and community involvement and support. While the details of the Common Elements strategy can be found in the paper, in essence it consists of a multi-year process designed to change the school community's beliefs and expectations as to the students' educational potential and institute successful practices in each of the 5 areas. The strategy includes having a skilled and committed principal who develops a vision, gets staff, parents, and communities to embrace that vision, and creates a team of leaders to help implement that vision, providing for extensive collaboration among teachers, mentoring, and professional development to meet the particular needs of each school's teacher, providing a challenging, rich, and culturally relevant curriculum, creating a climate of high expectations for academic achievement and behavior by all students, respect, support, and safety, enhancing parents' skills to help their children learn at home, and providing school and wraparound community services to overcome students' non-academic obstacles to learning. What's required in DC and nationally is nothing less than a fundamental change in school reform strategy, from the failed tests and punishment strategy to one that actually works. What I'm talking about is the antithesis of the top-down, micromanaged reform model that has been in place locally for the past 6 years and nationally for the past 10 years. We need a collective and collaborative model, a model that pays heed to the social and racial context in which schools operate, a model that honors the experiences of students, a model that recognizes not only that all children can learn, but all children can teach as well. Instead of punishing staff, we need to build cooperative and collective relationships at the building level, at the local level, at the individual school level. What I'm talking about is hard work, but it's way overdue for the children we're fighting for, and anything that you put together that actually works requires hard work. Unfortunately, we've come into this sort of easy idea of what works. We think that somehow if you have someone at the top like a mayor, who then has a chancellor, and then everything flows down, that somehow, just because it's streamlined, it works and it's effective and it's efficient. But there's whole kinds of problems with that. One is just simply being able to dialogue about your child's education. Who do you talk to if they don't want to listen, and if they're only accountable to the chancellor, and the chancellor is only accountable to the mayor, then you have effectively locked out grassroots participation in their children's education. When we're talking about this collaborative model, it's sort of to break down this balkanized climate that exists in the school and bring all parties to the table. administrator, teacher, parents, community leaders, and students to bring them to the table because each had a perspective on what is needed in the educational endeavor. We want to be a system where there are professionals and then there are all the rest. When in fact, we're all engaged and should be engaged in the education of our children. So this collaborative model calls for a different kind of structure, and it requires much, much more work than is basically manifest right now, but hard work produce good results. As low-achieving schools become good schools, they will provide effective teaching and learning for their students, as good schools around the country already do. Tests will then merely confirm that the needed changes are being made and the schools are getting better. The overall role of DC public schools must be to do everything it can through policy, funding, technical support, and other means to help low-achieving schools implement the common elements. Specific actions that DC's public officials need to take to begin to bring about educational justice for the children we're fighting for include publicly admitting that DC public schools' test and punishment strategy has failed to effectively educate the low-income Black and Latino students it was supposed to help, and that it has failed to reduce the achievement gap between low-income and higher-income students. If it fails there, in terms of reducing that achievement gap, it has failed. In fact, they've allowed the gap to become worse. And so there needs to be on anything the admission, first of all, that something isn't working in order to get down and roll up one sleeve and decide that you need to fix some things in order to make it work. We also need to engage parents and the community in discussions about the need to replace the current test, intimidate, and punish strategy with a strategy concentrating on helping low-achieving schools improve by implementing the common elements of successful school turnarounds. Gain their support to make this fundamental change. We also need to recruit and hire as many principals as possible who have led significant improvements in low-achieving schools to lead turnarounds in Washington, D.C. Emphasize hiring principals who are familiar with Washington, D.C. and understand the economic, cultural, and social circumstance of its public school students and families, not just based on their resumes. Also, we need to give principals the authority to reach out to their communities and lead turnarounds, providing strong mentoring, peer collaboration, and other support for principals. Replace one-year contracts driven by a compulsion to raise test scores with at least 5-year contracts focused on implementing the common elements. We also need to hire teachers who have graduated from teachers' colleges or other teacher preparation programs that provide at least 1 year intensive supervised training in the classroom. No more teachers should be hired from programs providing merely several weeks of training. We need to become serious about our students. And we need to stop closing public schools east of Rock Creek Park, vastly, disproportionately injuring Black students. We need to provide good public schools in every neighborhood that are resourced in proper ways that are appropriate to the context in which they exist. And when I say appropriate to the context in which they exist, you're not going to resource a school that you basically categorize right now as failing with the same resources that you're going to fund a school that is categorized as successful. You're going to need to put more funds and more resources and more energy in a place where the schools are failing in order to turn it around. So you cannot have this cookie-cutter model of your idea of reform and expect for it to work in places that it has not worked. The Fenty, Gray, Reed, Henderson, and national high-stakes testing strategies are fundamentally misconceived and ineffective as ways to improve low-achieving schools. They do not address the real problems. They cause severe harms to teachers, to principals, to students, to families, and to neighborhoods, especially black and brown neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. Now is the time for D.C. and America as a whole to put a stop to this ineffective and destructive so-called school reform strategy. We already know a good deal about what it takes to transform low-achieving schools, implement the common elements of successful school turnarounds. We know what that looks like. And when we do this, when we get the political will to do this, when we end up with the moral will to do this, we will provide teachers and principals and parents the respect and support they need to nurture our children as learners, and we will leave the devastating past behind. We will pay homage to mothers and fathers that dreamed of their children going further than they ever could go.